Okay. Good morning, folks. It's Kurt again. I am going to be um, going over some stuff for week one, just going through the week one folder a little bit, kind of giving you some strategies as to how to approach some stuff um, as it is, right? So, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to screen share. So, here is our course site. Just as a review, I will take you through a couple of things. If you recall, basically everything is through course content, and there's multiple ways to get there. You can get there through content, you can get there through course content, getting started, etc. But anyway, you want to go to course content. Note that there is a link to the syllabus area here. Um, and this contains my course overview video, which I posted at the beginning of beginning of the weekend, I should say. If you have not had a chance to view this, please view this video and please uh, take a look at the syllabus. If there are any confusions or anything like that, please send me an email and let me know so that I can address that. Okay. Um, but let's move into week one. So we'll go to course content again. So I really recommend that you take the time to watch this BBC Romantic Poets documentary because it, as I was saying in the course overview video, it grounds the British Romantics in time and place, and really, you know, talks about what their concerns were, what they were writing about, what inspired them, right, the life circumstances, etc. And so I really recommend that you take the time to watch this. I think it's about an hour. Um, the two poets that I really um, think are, you know, primarily significant here, at least that are on this list, are going to be Samuel Taylor Coleridge and John Keats. I included Percy by Shelley because he kind of, is the firebrand, for the Romantic poets, as you'll see when you look at the Poach documentary. But really, Coleridge and Keats, they represent some sort of interesting movements, creatively and stylistically and so forth. And their work has had just a really enduring uh, effect, right, on poetry in the English language, right? So we look at Coleridge. Um, Incidentally, just about probably about 80%, 65 to 80% of what I'm providing you is ultimately coming from the Poetry Foundation. So, like, if you look at this intro to Coleridge, um, down at the bottom here, right? If you watch the video, you're going to get most of this information. The cool thing is that these intros, if you look at them, talk about um, poets that Coleridge goes on to influence and so on and so forth. So you can do a lot with that if you just are interested in his work and you want to see kind of where that influence develops and so forth. These links are useful in that regard. But what I was going to show you is if you go down to the bottom here, um, it will, there's various um, samples of Coleridge's work that they provide, and this is true for all the different poets that we're going to look at, um, relative to what's available on Poetry Foundation. But I'm going to go back over here um, to our course site. So Kubla Khan, if you when you watch the video, you'll see that it's really sort of Coleridge's uh, introduction into what would become the romantic sentiment. He becomes sort of inadvertently addicted to laudanum and has a vision, right? While taking laudanum, and what results, or at least in part, is the poem Kubla Khan. And yes, it's problematic in our day because it is what is amounts to Orientalism, right? Um, fetishizing, right, the East, right, which becomes a problem in British and American literature for a long time. But the point here is that he's allowing his imagination to take him to a place that he's never been, and he's essentially creating this world based on an idea, a concept of Kubla Khan, or rather, he's taking this vision that he is experiencing by way of laudanum, and then ascribing it to, or putting the character or the person of Kubla Khan into it, right? It's probably pretty more accurate to say. But you'll see you've got the poem here. It's the Poetry Foundation page. You've got a reading of Kubla Khan, and you've got a basic analysis of Kubla Khan. So if we click over here, and I showed this in my last video as well, this is a very basic analysis of um, the poem Kubla Khan. Um, Please feel free to disagree with various elements of these analyses. Again, these are baseline, basic analysis of these poems. I included them to kind of give you a foundation of what's going on, to try to assuage confusion, if you will, with some of the pieces, right? So, but please disagree with them if you want to. If you feel moved to do so, write about your disagreement in your journal, or in your poetry. I mean, in your discussion boards. Um, you know, um, be inspired to create a poetry project based on your particular reading of a poem. If there were just one reading of a poem, right, we would not be talking about these poems for 200 plus years, right? It just wouldn't be, would be no point. Um, so again, I mentioned before Christabel. I included Christabel because it's sort of the inauguration of vampires in British literature. And so, for those of you that are into vampires, there is a character in here that can be read as a vampire. So I just included that for, you know, shits and giggles, so to speak. Right. Um, the Coleridge piece that obviously I provided the most info on would be Rime of the Ancient Mariner, because it has, you know, sort of had this reverberating influence over the last couple of centuries. Um, I would start honestly by watching or listening to, well, yeah, I would start by watching or listening to the either the Ian McKellen reading or the film, the Rime of the Ancient Mariner film. I'd actually go with the film, because you do get the visual there, and the film is illustrated almost entirely with animated still shots of the illustrations of Gustave Doré. And again, you can conceive of the film as well as the still shots themselves as indeed artistic responses to Coleridge's work, which would make them quote unquote poetry projects, right? So if you wanted to create a work of art influenced by a poem, what Gustave Doré did with his still shots, that's an example. And I wouldn't ask you to illustrate the whole poem, right? I'm just, but and the film itself is a version of that, right? And then here I have a PDF with copious notes. very similar to the poetry project, or rather similar to the analysis pages, right? But I have some notes on Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And then for those of you that grew up in the 80s, like myself, you will no doubt remember Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Iron Maiden, which is it's not a retelling of the whole poem. It's part of the poem, and it was a very popular song um, in the 80s and early to mid 80s. And you know, that's where I first heard of Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Incidentally, was Iron Maiden. But again, that's Iron Maiden's interpretation, Iron Maiden's artistic response to a work of art, right? Then we have, and again, unless you're going to write about or spend a lot of time on Rime of the Ancient Mariner over the coming weeks, I don't necessarily expect you to uh, watch the lecture by Belinda Jack, but she does delve into Coleridge's poetic technique and kind of what he's doing there. It's a really interesting and informative lecture. Again, it's about an hour of your time. The Malcolm Guite, I guess that's how you say his name, lecture is kind of an alternative reading of Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Um, Arguing for a kind of faith-based reading of the poem. So anyway, I put those kind of on there as sort of counterpoints. Um, okay, so that would be Coleridge. Again, as far as your focus with Coleridge, I would focus on, Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Um, let's go back to course conduct, or go back to week one. Um, John Keats, honestly, I would, for my time and money, so to speak, focus on Ode to a Grecian Urn. This is the poem that really sort of encapsulates in a lot of ways Keats's view of the imagination, of reality. Um, it has one of the most famous lines in British poetry in it. Truth is beauty, beauty, truth. That's all you need to know on earth and all you need to know. I'm butchering it, but yeah, I would look at Ode to a Grecian Urn. I would listen to it, read it, look at the analysis. Um, Again, only if you want to do more advanced work on Keats would I look at the Venler the piece where basically it's a guy probably in either Australia or New Zealand going through Venler's the late Helen Venler's detailed analysis of Ode to a Grecian Urn, right? I wouldn't spend, again, because this is a summer course. Y'all are doing very important work outside of the university as well as within the university. I wouldn't spend a lot of time on that unless you really are interested in Keats. Um, I really enjoy Keats. I put a number of his pieces here. The odes in general, I believe there are six of them. There are six or eight, but I included a couple of them, three of them here. I included La Belle Dame Sans Merci because it is considered in a lot of by some people to be kind of a response to Christabel. So if you look at Christabel, you might look at La Belle Dame, um, just as kind of a companion piece. Um, and then looking at Percy Shelley, um, really just what I would do here, honestly, is I would give Ozymandias, performed by Bryan Cranston, a listen because, well, it's Bryan Cranston and it's in the context of Breaking Bad, and so it's a interesting piece. If you are graphic novel comic book fan like myself, you'll note, you will, I'm sure the name Ozymandias will have a ring to it. He was the primary villain in The Watchmen, right? And I'm quite sure that the reference comes from this poem. Okay, so 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 you might take a look at that. Okay, but again, particularly on this week, um, I do recommend that you look at the British Romantic Poets documentary to really to frame everything that's going on. Okay. As far as assignments this week, let's go out here to course content. Again, I've organized everything um, in just all the assignments I just put in one repository, right? Just for convenience sake. So for this week, what I'm asking you to do is to complete your first um, discussion board entry. And remember, for discussion board entries, you get 50 points for doing the entry and then 50 points for responding to somebody else. So it's a total of 100 points. Please give me your first post before 11:59 on the 10th. That's going to be Wednesday. Please, before Wednesday at midnight, I need that post. The reason being is this is the census date assignment, meaning that by way of completing this post, it's my evidence and evidence that I can give to the university that you are participating in the course. Okay, so I need that before Wednesday at midnight. To complete it, you just click on it, create your thread, and then follow the instructions. Um, it and you won't be able to see anybody else's posts until you create your own thread. Okay. Um, and I'll just go back to assignments just so that you can kind of plan out, strategize your next couple of weeks. So, um, next week, on the 17th, you'll have your first poetry journal due. That you're just writing to me about your feelings, thoughts, questions, etc., and so on about the poems that you are reading, be it what's assigned, what's not assigned, etc. And try to be specific. Quote from the poems, talk about specific language that appeals to you, or that you have questions about, and so on. Right. Um, and just because you have questions about it doesn't necessarily mean that I'll have the answers, but I'll try. Uh, and then also next week, you'll have your week 2 discussion forum, and I'm going to ask you to talk about both the readings for week 1 and the readings for week 2. But again, if you look, as I talked about in my course overview video, if you look at how I've got this set up, you don't have to answer every aspect of this discussion board, right? You're going to pick one. So, for example, down here, discuss the British and or Romantic poets' approach to death, or discuss the role of imagination in romantic poetry, or discuss Whitman's concept of the self, or discuss your own significant takeaways from one or more of the assigned works from first 2 weeks. Be specific, right? So you always have that out, right? As far as this, if there's something burning in your psyche that you want to talk about relative to these readings, you can do that. Um, but again, that's not until next week. I wanted to make week 1 a lighter week, um, simply because you're plugging into the course, and also give you a chance to get some of the readings, to delve into some of the readings for the first 2 weeks, to kind of get yourself uh, familiarized with some of this material. I will have a week 2 intro video out before the end of this week. So you'll get some insight into kind of an approach to the work for week 2, well before week 2. That is going to be um, all for this video. Again, welcome to the course, and please get me that first discussion board post by Wednesday the 10th. Okay, thank you so much.